Hi, this is Shadon Larkey from Awards Watch, and I'm here with the hair and makeup, or some of the hair and makeup department for Hulu's Pam and Tommy. I'll give you guys the opportunity to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm David Williams. I'm the makeup department head.
Hi there, I'm Barry Lee Moe. I'm the hair department head.
I'm Jason Collins. I'm the prosthetic makeup designer.
So guys, I wanted to start with, there was this moment where we saw the first photos of Lily James and there was this collective gasp around the internet of just how much she looked like Pamela Anderson. So I'm curious about that moment from your perspective.
I remember being on set when those came out. There were discussions, of course. Barry and I and the producers were all discussing in advance the release of images because we were concerned about the fact that paparazzi was getting our images out there and they were only partial images. And we want, with our main core of on-set producers really wanted to get our images out there in full. And I remember the day we were on set and those came out and I think it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. And within an hour or two, all of our phones were blowing up. It was #1 on all social media. It was incredibly exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
It was kind of validating as well, because when you're doing these looks and these makeups, I mean, you think you got it right, but you never really know until the public sort of reacts to it.
And it helped us to shape kind of how we continued with the project. And it let us know we were doing it right, but we also got to see how we could continue to do it right, but make improvements along the way.
Oh, that's interesting. Was there anything that sort of shifted or anything you started to do differently?
I don't think so. I think it just gave us a closer look outside of our world. Seeing a photo that comes from another camp, being able to kind of step back and say, oh, we're on the right track. So it was just an affirmation of anything that we were doing, and we were on the right track.
Okay, so let's say it's early in the morning and Lily walks into the trailer. Can you guys sort of take me step by step through your different departments and what exactly happens to her, her makeup and her hair and what prosthetics?
She started with me every day. In order for the prosthetics to go on successfully, we had to prep her own hair away into a wig prep, so that required wrapping her hair into a standard wig prep every morning before she headed off to start her transformation in prosthetics with makeup. So I did that for about 30 minutes bright and early, and then she was off to David's team.
And that would start with Jason and Jennifer Aspinall and Moan Meinhardt and Abby Lyle would begin in any pairing or group of those people would be beginning the prosthetic application for her from forehead to full breastplate prosthetics. And she would go through it was about 4 hours, hair and makeup. It would be prosthetic application. And then on top of the prosthetics, we do what's called a corrective makeup, which isn't really correcting any features or anything. They're both beautiful women. So we're turning one beautiful woman into another beautiful woman. It's more highlight and shading that further enhances the prosthetic designed by Jason and Autonomous Effects. And from that, we then go into the character and the period makeup, all set in the script and the words. And on top of that, we would do beauty makeup. I would be bouncing back and forth between both Team Pam and Team Tommy as needed in whichever area would be needed at any given moment.
And then once she finished that process and her prosthetics were all on and the makeup was applied, then she'd come back to hair. And that's when we would place the wig and do any adjustments to silhouette and style that I needed to see on her actual head. And we'd put the wig on delicately and get her off to set.
And Jason, what specific prosthetics did you have for Lily?
So for Lily, we had a forehead prosthetic. We had teeth dentures, which is openers and lowers. And we had breast prosthetics. As we got later on into the series, we had pregnant belly prosthetics for her as well. And so, you know, our process begins with live casting Lily's full head and torso, and also, you know, in a lot of instances we scan as well. But for her, we went ahead and live casted her. And David and I were able to really sort of, once we had her in three-dimensional space, we were able to sort of see what differences were between Lily and Pam and where to make the biggest sort of jumps. And what we realized right off the bat was the amount of forehead space between Lily's eyebrows and the start of her hairline was much thinner, much smaller, more condensed than Pam's was. So we decided early on that, you know, we needed to cover Lily's eyebrows anyway, because she has these beautiful, luscious eyebrows, that we wanted to cover those with the prosthetic just above her eyelid all the way 2 inches past her hairline. And once we did that, that gave us the shape and form of the forehead that allowed us to really sort of get a lot of mileage out of a real similar look between Lily and Pam. And, you know, Lily's got a great jawline and she's got a lot of great similar features. It's just that once we opened up that just a little bit, it allowed Barry to sort of place the hair about a half inch past her hairline and actually just really open up quite a bit. So from profile, from silhouette, all of those things, it really worked.
Mm-hmm. And was there an element of the transformation that you guys think is like maybe not as obvious, something that would surprise people to know that that was something that you had to change? Like, I had no idea about the forehead. I just assumed that was her natural forehead.
Oh, that's
I
good.
always say the devil's in the details, and Barry, Jason, and I are the three little devils.
I love
some details that might not be quite as noticeable are the teeth that Jason mentioned that she was wearing that changed her smile, and the structuring slightly of her upper lip and how it lays across the front row of top teeth. The contacts that both she and Sebastian wore, changing both of their eye colors to their respective character eye colors, and even down to the acrylic nails that we had put on Lily and touched up every 10 days to 2 weeks. We would have new acrylics applied as well to keep everything looking very spot on to Pam.
Mm-hmm. And let's move to Sebastian, because, you know, I think rightfully a lot of the buzz is around Lily and her transformation, but his is equally complicated and surprising and impressive. So what went into his look?
I mean, for his hair, we had to change his texture and color. Obviously, Sebastian has a natural hair texture that's much different than Tommy Lee's. And when he came to the project, he was still growing his hair out from another project. And thankfully, by the time we got to camera tests, his hair had reached a length that we could work with. But we decided for ease of styling and maintenance to alter the texture of his hair and did a Brazilian smoothing treatment that he had done at Melrose, Harper Salon on Melrose here in LA. And they maintained that throughout. And then in the trailer, Erica Adams, his hairstylist, colored his hair and kind of perfected that perfect translucent black that wasn't too matte and didn't read like artificial color on camera. And it had, you know, a lot of light and reflection to it. And then with product and everything, we were really able to get that sort of edgy rocker look that Tommy Lee was known for.
We were always balancing Sebastian's natural movie star look with the rocker look. So we were very careful to keep him looking like a rocker. For us in makeup, the features, you know, in coloring, we would color his facial hair, his soul patch that he had, and eyebrows to match the coloring that Barry and his team had done. Team Tommy was Bill Meyer and Dave Snyder, and they would apply the extensive tattoos and nipple piercing prosthetics to Tommy every day. And Jason can speak to the process of making those tattoos as well. It's quite a process to go through to get to the place that we can apply that volume of tattoos on someone.
Yeah, so how we start the project normally is we create a chronological order of the time period in which the story's taking place for Tommy. And we researched all of his tattoos, you know, from before our story to after our story. And we went ahead and got Sebastian into our studio to scan him so that we can create these tattoos in a three-dimensional space via Photoshop. And when you scan somebody, you get their information. So you get to sort of see the distance between their wrists and their elbows, shoulders, that kind of thing. So it tells you the dimension in a three-dimensional space of what you have to work with real estate wise. So we went ahead and designed the tattoos and wrapped them around so that we knew that everything would interlock and work. And then we broke those tattoos up into about 30 to 35 separate tattoos that we would apply daily. Those tattoos get printed onto a water slide type paper with an adhesive applied to the back of them. And then we transfer them onto the actor's skin via saturating the paper with water, and they just slide right off and lock onto his skin. So it's a bit of a process, and he was in that process for about 3 hours every day. In addition to that, we made pierced nipples for him, essentially. So, you know, when you use that kind of fake jewelry for the piercings, it never really looks 100% right. So we decided early on that we really wanted to sort of actually pierce a piece of skin. So we went ahead and made a whole nipple that blended around his actual nipple and was built on top. And to get that right was a little daunting because you know, just a little too much and it feels like it's cold in the room. So, you know, we ended up resculpting those about 3 times to get them perfect and right. So his whole process was about 3 hours. And you know, he was great. Trooper.
Both of these images that we were creating of these characters are very iconic. When I went to get the nipple piercings from the salon, it wasn't his salon, but I took in a picture of Tommy Lee's chest and to tell the owner of this piercing salon that I wanted this gauge nipple. And first thing he said to me is, "Are you working with Tommy Lee?" And I was like, "No, why do you ask?" And even though he didn't see face and he didn't see much of his body, just the upper part of his torso from his neck to just below his chest, he said, "That's Tommy Lee. I know those tattoos. He's pretty identifiable." And it lets you know how just pieces of these people are so known to so many people. It's not just the whole look we had to get right. It's all the individual pieces that get there.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, you know, the show covers a span of time. And so I'm curious for each of you in your disciplines, what changes did you have to make to sort of your original plans? And how did you alter those appearances to sort of cover aging and the passage of time?
I mean, we all kind of decided to stay within a certain world because most of the story that you see does take place during a few years in their life. But we did have noticeable flashbacks for both Pam and Tommy. Tommy's was more kind of additional material that you saw in the behind the scenes videos for Motley Crue stuff. But we did have a day where we transformed Sebastian, and he actually did wear a wig for that flashback so we could change his look because his hair was so much different earlier in his life. And the same with Pam when we got to episode 7, when we were flashing back to Pam coming to LA for the first time in the Playboy shoot. We really had to play with texture and color and how that was different than where we saw Pam in the mid 90s. And that was having another wig built for Lily for that portion of the episode. When you see her hair is much darker and more of a golden blonde than it is a platinum blonde. And the texture was more enhanced as well to show the youthful side of Pam and where she was at that point in her life.
And even though it was a small Easter egg to the audience, the glam rock look of Motley Crue, it was fun to travel those boys back to that moment because we were living in their post glam rock era most of the time. And so it was fun for us in makeup to really take them back to the glory days of makeup that they were known for when they first came on the scene.
For us, prosthetics wise, you know, all we really altered and changed as the story went forward was really just covering Pam's pregnancy. So when she was pregnant with her first child and delivering and everything, so we knew early on we were going to need a belly prosthetic, and obviously slightly larger breast prosthetic, so that we could have this scene later in the show. And we also had an animatronic baby that that she's holding, that's moving. It's a little robot baby that looks really natural. So those are the sort of things that we did for prosthetics, really just to indicate the passage of time. There wasn't much change in the tattoos or anything like that, and obviously nothing changed on her facial structure because that kept throughout the whole show.
I'm smiling because there's just so many things that I didn't consider. It's just so interesting to learn about.
Yeah,
David, I wanted to ask you, because one of the big things about Lily's transformation that was so shocking to me was her eye shape, because it's just completely different.
A little paint will make you what you ain't. A lot of it, as I had touched on a little earlier, is when we're doing highlight and shadow in the corrective part of the makeup, we're really looking at things in almost a geometrical form on the face, in rectangles and squares and triangles. And it is creating that image of both of them have great cheekbones, but the wider face. Pam has a little bit more of a square, broad upper part of her face. So we wanted to highlight that, to bring that out below the eye and above the eye as well, because when we bring the prosthetic down below the brow, Autonomous Effects and Jason did a remarkable job of being able to sculpt that piece thinner and thicker in the exact right areas that gave us a little bit more of the eye space that Pam has. Pam's upper lid it has a little bit more space to it than does Lily's, and by being able to create that, it gives us the ability to enhance the shape of the shadow of shadowing her eye. Also, eyeliner is our friend. It's a great tool to use in those situations. Pam's look for Playboy was created by Alexis Vogel, and we have an homage to her throughout the show. You'll see in bits and pieces behind the scenes, there is a redheaded hair or makeup person with her, and that's our nod to Alexis, who created that look for Pam, the Baby Bardot look that is so famous that all of those girls subsequently emulated, and that became sort of the stamp of Playboy throughout the 90s and 2000s. So in the creation of that, again, it's looking at pictures and going back and forth, and at any given moment, all of us are looking at the image that we're going to create, whether it's Baywatch or The Tonight Show or any number of things, or in those images that we don't know, those private moments, the at-home moments, the softer, more natural Pam, which you get to see that side here in this show that is not just about what happens on screen, it's about what happens in people's everyday lives, and how the outside world, what influences that happen outside can impact how one interacts inside their world privately. And so I don't know if that answered the question or not.
No, absolutely. And Barry, you mentioned your wigs. I was curious about that. How many did you create? What was that process like? And to touch on David's point, how did you manage the hairstyling of sort of Pam when she's being Pam Anderson and Pam when she's at home?
So all of the wigs are custom wigs for our principal characters that are built by wig maker associates here in Beverly Hills. And those all start early on, months before we begin the process, because it takes 4 to 6 weeks to build each wig. They're all hand ventilated and built on film lace so that the hairline truly looks natural on camera. In total, on the whole show, with our day players and everyone, we had about 27 lace front wigs. And then we also had additional wigs that we used on top of that for background and different things. But there were 27 lace fronts. Pam had 4 herself, 3 that were her hero wigs that we used throughout the 90s era, and then the 1 flashback wig. And that gave us the flexibility to change looks within the same day. Because Lily had multiples, I could get her into one look in the morning and then change her into something else in the afternoon. But it also kept the hair healthy throughout, because I was able to rotate her wigs with such a high level platinum blonde. You know, all of the heat styling and everything, the color gets compromised, and it's just already very delicate hair to begin with. So you have to be mindful of that when you're approaching it. And I knew that one wig, without all of the looks that she had, was not going to be enough. So thankfully our producers allowed me to have multiples for her. And the same with Seth and Nick Offerman and Taylor Schilling. Like, they all had their own unique looks on the show, and they were all in custom wigs as well. And it was fun to play with their silhouettes. But to speak on what David started, you know, a lot of the show, we see private moments in their life that were never photographed or filmed, things that we had to, as creatives, dive into the world and say, you know, what did they look like in these moments at home when they were making breakfast for each other, or getting out of the shower and starting their day? Like, how does that world look, and what would they have looked like? And through conversations with our actors, and then in just kind of diving into the research a little bit, we were able to find those contrasting looks. And for Pam, you'll see a lot of it was like her natural texture at home, or kind of a wet look, or simply her hair just thrown into a messy top knot, like things that were more vulnerable and a little bit less performative, like her looks were when she went out in public. A lot of the looks that you see her in public are over the top, you know, the bombshell look, the sexy Bardot updos, and all of that. So it was important to find a contrast there so that we could see the softer side of Pam and the vulnerable side.
Yeah, and as we close out our time together, I wanted to ask each of you if there was a particular look that you wanted to highlight, something that, you know, you're proudest of or took the longest, something that you wanted our audience to know about. And to that end, if there's anything that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to mention. David, we can start with you.
Sure. For me, 2 looks stand out as my most special looks. First of all, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. I did the last 3 years of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. So to be able to recreate that with not only myself, who was there, but Jennifer Aspinall was there doing the Jay Leno makeup. And she and I both did The Tonight Show in the last few years together. It was a wonderful moment to be on those stages, recreating that, and feeling like we were back in the NBC studios. And hands down, the Baywatch look, just really, it was one of those looks that we had to hit. And again, it was the ability to step back when the paparazzi photos came out the following day that blew our minds and let us really know we're on the right track.
And Jason, for you?
I think my favorite look is probably the Tonight Show look, for sure. You know, I mean, you know, if you take a still frame of what we created and actually what the Tonight Show actually looked like when she was on it with Jay Leno, it's pretty incredible that you can put them side by side and that it really works. And, you know, another fun makeup to create was the Jay Leno makeup, because, you know, that's one of those situations where, you know, it's like the rest of the show. It's you're always worried about going too far into caricature. And so really just sort of trying to find the attributes of the performer that you're working with that's going to sort of get you in that realm of the subject that we're replicating, you know, is always fun. So like, we did a makeup test of Jay Leno, and we realized that we needed to go back to the drawing board and resculpt it because it was looking too caricature, because, you know, he has got that great big chin, and, you know, it's easy to really make anybody look like a caricature when you do that. So those are some of the sort of pitfalls of the show that you always were really worried about doing, was creating a caricature. And luckily enough, with the support of the producers and you know, everybody and the artists themselves, we were able to do multiple makeup tests on a lot of these looks just to get everybody in the right zone. So, you know, but yeah, that was my favorite look, and that was a little bit additional of what I wanted to say.
And Barry, are there any details that you didn't get to touch on?
No, I just think it's important when people look at this show that they really pay attention to the character transformations. All of us worked really hard to maintain aspects of each actor while simultaneously making them disappear into this world. And I think we were successful at that. And, you know, we obviously Pam was our focus, but when you look at the cast, as a whole, it's a really well-rounded group of character transformations. Especially when you look at where they started, all of these actors, you know, these are all looks that none of these individuals have been seen in before. And I think that's part of the magic of this piece, is that you really do get lost in this world of Pam, Tommy, Rand, and beyond. And it's kind of magical to see it unfold. And I can't wait personally to watch it on the 2nd.
My favorite Barry was the updo for Pam when on the party scene that he'd been saving, that blew us all out of the water in the moment.
Anytime I got to do updos on her, I mean, working on this was like having a Barbie doll, you know, it was a dream come true every day.
Well, I was telling Jason before we started, I was like, accolades are coming and you have plenty more interviews to do. and I'm sorry, there's going to be a long press tour for you, but I mean, you deserve all the attention and all the accolades. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Your
day.
mouth to God's ear.